Discover the incredible secret behind the CEO's Mockery, a touching twist that changed everything. Emily sat at her desk, the walls of the high-profile architecture firm pressing in on her. The hum of the city outside faded into the background as she fought against the weight of Jake's laughter echoing in her mind. "Ha! You think you can design a building, Emily? What a quaint little dream." His words slashed through her like a knife. She gripped her pencil so tightly her knuckles turned white. How could he not see the potential in her? She dreamed of beautiful skylines, of creating spaces that inspired, yet his cynicism squeezed the very air from her lungs. Each day in this glass fortress felt like a battle between her ambitions and her fears. She glanced at her sketchbook hidden beneath her desk, a treasure trove of late-night creations filled with hope and creativity, waiting for the chance to breathe. Would anyone in this firm ever truly appreciate her vision? Or was she just meant to be the voice on the other end of the phone, relaying messages and coordinating schedules, endlessly supporting others' dreams while hers withered like autumn leaves? As the ticking clock sandwiched her thoughts, she hesitated, torn by a question that tortured her soul. Should she share her designs with Jake? Would the man who belittled her ambitions also dismiss her artistic choices? That uncertainty gnawed at her resolve, making her feel small, invisible. Yet in a fleeting moment, a glimmer ignited within her, a memory of her mother's encouragement echoing in her heart, urging her to chase her dreams despite the shadows. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. A sudden rush of nostalgia pierced through her, for in the attic of her childhood home she had unearthed a dusty old photo album. Within its pages lay images of her grandfather, the once renowned architect whose legacy filled Chicago's skyline. But just as she felt a connection to her family's history, the revelation hit her: Jake was woven into this narrative, too. It was like a jigsaw puzzle she had never wanted to complete. The knowledge that they shared blood twisted her emotions into knots: anger, confusion, hope. Could Jake, with all his mockery, truly understand the weight of a shared past? Or was that past just another burden for her to carry, another layer of sadness atop the expectations she felt crushing down on her? Days went by, filled with increasingly frantic sketches, each stroke a rebellion against the despair, yet just as she stood on the precipice of sharing her most profound creation, uncertainty loomed large. What if her designs were nothing more than fanciful daydreams, mere shadows of what could never be? The night before the competition submission, she found herself gripping her sketches tighter than ever, the tremor in her hand betraying the anguish within her chest. Standing outside the firm's grand atrium, she battled her instincts, heart racing, dread washing over her. One glance at Jake, buried in his blueprints, and all her courage threatened to drain away. Was this a moment of potential or the harbinger of more mockery? With every moment that passed, she felt the pulse of her determination falter as doubt seeped into her resolve. Would her legacy stay hidden, or could taking this risk unveil her true path? Emily took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill her lungs. The atrium was luminous, rays of daylight streaming through the glass ceiling, but all she could see was Jake's silhouette, focused and unwavering, seemingly unaware of her turmoil. With each heartbeat, she felt time slipping away, like grains of sand in an hourglass, each grain reminding her of her dreams left unfulfilled. Confronting her insecurities head-on, she steeled herself for a decision that could either elevate her or plunge her further into doubt. There had to be a way to assert herself, to claim her place in a world that belittled her potential. The inching weight of her familial legacy collided with the fleeting impulse of self-discovery. She was not just Emily, the underappreciated assistant, she was a designer, a creator, and it was time to remind everyone, including herself, of that truth. Collecting her sketches, she flicked through the pages illuminated by the subtle glow of the atrium lights, each one a fragment of her vision, a testament to sleepless nights spent pouring her soul into her work. With renewed determination, she made a choice. One step forward, she thought. That's all it took to begin changing the narrative. As she walked toward Jake's workspace, a familiar knot formed in her stomach. He lifted his gaze as she approached, his expression unreadable. For a brief moment, they locked eyes, hers filled with a fierce resolve, his shadowed with indifference. "Jake," she began, her voice steady but unsure, "can we talk about something important?" "Emily," he replied, mildly curious but with a hint of skepticism. "I'm in the middle of something here." She swallowed her fear, pressing forward. "I know you've seen my sketches. I need you to look at them. I want you to give me your honest opinion." "Interesting," he said, leaning back slightly, amusement evident in his tone. "What's got you so fired up to show me your little doodles?" A spark of anger ignited within her. "They're more than doodles, Jake. And more than a little dream. They represent not just my vision but also our family's legacy." His smirk faltered momentarily, surprise flickering across his face. Underneath, she sensed a churning of emotions, maybe even an echo of familial recognition. Sensing the opening, she pressed on. "What I create is significant, and it deserves to be seen. I deserve to be seen. You think the world is just going to hand you recognition for your complaints?" He shot back, but his voice lacked the usual certainty. A surge of adrenaline coursed through her veins. "Recognition isn't handed out, Jake. It's claimed. I'm here to claim mine." Clenching her sketches tighter, she thrust them forward as if offering him a window into her soul. She watched his expression shift from amusement to contemplation, the challenge laced in her words striking a nerve. Perhaps for the first time, he was faced with her courage and the reality of their connection, the potential of what they both could achieve together if he could see past the shadows of their past. Then, as she stood there, poised for Jake's response, the tension coiling tighter around them like a spring, she realized that this moment, brief yet monumental, was not just about her dreams. It was about confronting the cynicism that clouded their family ties. Would he dismiss her again, or would he unlock the door to something deeper within both of them? With her heartbeat echoing in her ears, Emily prepared for the answer that could redefine everything. Jake's brow furrowed as he glanced at the sketches, his fingers brushing against the edges of the pages, betraying an initial disinterest that slowly morphed into a semblance of engagement. Emily held her breath, both anxious and hopeful, caught in the delicate web of her past and future. "All right, let us see what you've got," he said, the teasing edge now replaced with an unguarded curiosity. She could hardly believe her ears. Perhaps this was the moment that would alter her trajectory. "Each piece embodies a concept that speaks to modern design and how we might redefine what our family name means to the world," she explained, her voice gaining strength as she elaborated on her intentions. She pointed out the lines, the colors, the emotions woven into the fabric of her creations. For the first time, she felt herself shedding the invisible shackles of doubt. Jake studied the sketches with an intensity that filled the space around them. Emily couldn't tell if the shadows dancing across his face signaled disdain or intrigue, but she chose to believe the latter. As he flipped through the pages, she seized the opportunity to assert her own narrative, stripping away the familiar insecurities that often haunted her. "Design isn't just about aesthetics," she continued, "it's an emotional connection, the power to influence and inspire change. I want to create something meaningful." The fervor in her voice surprised even her, a testament to how buckets of pent-up energy poured over the brink into resolute purpose. For a fleeting moment, Jake paused, his fingers hovering above one particular sketch, a bold graphical representation of an architectural vision she had conceived. "It's unconventional," he admitted, the skepticism in his voice replaced by something softer, something almost like respect. "Unconventional is good," Emily countered fiercely. "It breaks barriers, challenges the status quo." She took a step closer, feeling the vibrations of her aspirations entwining with the air around them. "This could be our chance to redefine legacy, not just for our family, but for the whole industry." As she spoke, she noticed Jake's demeanor shift. Shadows etched around his eyes seemed to lighten, giving way to a flicker of recognition. It was an unexpected glimpse of camaraderie, a shared understanding that blazed through the tension that had always held them apart. The air buzzed with potential, feeding her determination and igniting something deeper within both, but Jake's response was layered, and she could sense it rising in him, a cocktail of nostalgia and ambition. Family means a lot to us, Em. But change doesn't come easy. Everyone expects us to uphold a certain image. In that moment, Emily felt the weight of legacy reinforce her resolve rather than bruise it. Maybe what everyone expects is precisely what needs to change. We can't bury ourselves under the past. We have to evolve, to challenge the very foundations upon which this business stands. Jake leaned back, still holding her sketches, the silence now weighted with unseen choices. Emily could feel her heart racing, the exhilarating fear of rejection inching toward a glimmer of acceptance. Would he stand by her side or retreat to the familiarity of skepticism, leaving her once again adrift in uncertainty? Do you really believe that? He finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper, though it shattered the silence with clarity. Yes, Emily said, a fierce determination shining through. I believe we can do something spectacular together. But it starts here, with us, breaking out of these patterns that hold us down. She watched the struggle dance behind his eyes, the tension of old expectations battling against the thrill of new possibilities. This was the pivotal point, the moment where she could either ignite his resolve or watch it diminish into apathy. As the seconds ticked by, Emily felt a quiet sense of urgency build within her, and she wondered what choice Jake would ultimately make. Would he join her in redefining their family's future, or retreat to the shadows of complacency once more? Her choices were laid bare before her, and though she knew her path could lead to both triumph and hardship, one thing was certain: she was ready for whichever journey would follow, as long as she could forge a new identity beyond what she had always been labeled. In the fragile silence that hung between them, she realized that the answer awaited not only his response but her own. Would she stand firm in her beliefs, regardless of the outcome? The moment felt monumental, alive with the promise of potential. But just as the air crackled with expectation, Emily heard footsteps approaching. A sudden twist of fate was waiting to intrude on her moment of vulnerability. What came next could shatter everything she hoped to build or propel her toward an unexpected partnership. As Emily's heart thudded in her chest, the footsteps grew closer. Jake's gaze remained fixed on her sketches, but the sudden sound was a jarring reminder of the outside world, one that could rip apart the fragile thread they had begun to weave between ambition and cooperation. A door creaked open, and in walked Mac, the COO, a perpetual naysayer whose humor often stung like a biting winter wind. Still playing with crayons, I see. He quipped, his voice dripping with mockery. The jest rolled over Emily like a heavy fog, threatening to pull her back into the shadows of insecurity. The sudden laughter that followed his words echoed through her mind like a relentless refrain, reminding her of every past dismissal. Jake's demeanor instantly shifted, his eyes hardening with irritation. Mac, this isn't a joke. Em is proposing some serious concepts here. His unexpected defense surprised Emily. She caught the glimmer in Jake's eyes as if they'd flickered back to the shared vision they had been discussing mere moments ago. Seriously? You think her little sketches could compete with established brands? You must be daydreaming, Jake, Mac said, his tone condescending as he waved dismissively at the pages. To Emily, it felt as if a net had been thrown over her burgeoning aspirations, tangling her resolve in disbelief and frustration, but rather than allowing herself to retreat into silence, she felt a surge of determination. Mac, she began, her voice steadier than she felt, these sketches embody a new vision. This is about innovation and evolution, something this company desperately needs. The fight in her ignited, the sense of her own agency felt undeniably powerful. Mac raised an eyebrow, clearly taken aback. Innovation? Is that what you call it? It looks like a bunch of slapdash ideas strung together by a child. His sarcasm was like a slap in the face. For a moment, uncertainty threatened to creep back in, but she sought refuge in the resolve she had summoned moments ago. Slapdash ideas or not, they represent a step toward revitalization, she declared louder, feeling the room bend to her confidence. Jake turned his full attention to Mac, and the atmosphere shifted slightly as he leaned forward. "Do you have a better idea, or are you just here to mock everyone?" His voice dripped with an underlying tension, a naked challenge. Emily marveled at how his willingness to defend her lent her the strength to press on. Mac's face twitched with irritation. "I prefer to deal in reality, not dreams. Our reputation is built on tried and true concepts, ones that attract clients and investors. Not this nonsense." Emily could feel it, a wave of energy gathering strength within her. She savored the tension, shifting it from disillusionment to motivation. The path forward was murky, but she would no longer apologize for her ambition or creative spirit. Reputation based on past successes doesn't guarantee future achievements. If we don't evolve, we'll fall behind. I want to elevate this legacy to something more, to redefine what it means in the current market. The room fell silent, all eyes on her. Even Mac seemed at a loss for words. She could see that Jake was considering both of their perspectives, his internal conflict evident. It dawned on her, she had sparked a debate, a critical stand for her vision that would echo beyond this one confrontation. The challenge lay ahead. There would be more than just Mac to face, they would need to win over an entire boardroom of skeptics. But in that moment, something shifted within Emily, igniting a conviction that whispered she could break through. She had stepped onto the battlefield of design and legacy, refusing to back down. As the silence grew thicker around them, she realized it was more than just about her ideas, it was an assertion of her identity. No longer would she cower in the shadow of others' opinions. She was ready to challenge the very core of the status quo. Before she could bask in the moment of self-discovery, Jake broke the silence. "Let us set up a group meeting. We'll present MS ideas to the board and see if they see what we see." His decision hung in the air, heavy with potential, but as they prepared to move forward, Emily felt a flicker of apprehension. Would she truly gather the courage to present her ideas before the board, or would the weight of expectation suffocate her vision? With newfound determination, she stepped toward her future, yet the looming confrontation with the board loomed large. The time had come to solidify her place in a world that anticipated conformity, and she was poised at the tipping point between support and resistance. What would she discover about her own resilience? Would the board embrace the radical vision she aimed to establish, or would they extinguish her ambitions before they even had a chance to take flight? In the days leading to the critical meeting with the board, Emily found herself tangled in a vortex of preparation and anxiety. The sketches lay on her desk, vibrant and hopeful, yet they felt like stones weighing her down. Every line whispered encouragement, yet doubt crept in, curling around her thoughts like a toxic vine. What if the board saw them as mere whims, vestiges of a juvenile imagination? Each night, she pulled the sketches closer, considering the designs not just as concepts but as her voice. Yet, in her stomach churned a blend of dread and exhilaration. The impending confrontation loomed larger with each passing hour, and an unshakable need to prove herself gnawed at her. That afternoon, she sat at the cafe across from the office, surrounded by the noise of clinking cups and murmurs of casual meetings. It was an unlikely sanctuary, but it provided a moment of clarity amidst her chaotic mind. As she absently stirred her coffee, her thoughts drifted toward her own journey, years of dedication, countless late nights, and self-doubt, each experience treading on the path that led her here. Beneath the fear, she sensed a flicker of excitement. This was not merely a challenge, it was an opportunity to redefine herself. She recalled the burning intent in her voice during the confrontation with Mac. The unexpected fire she had ignited within herself. But was it sustainable? Emily took a deep breath and scanned her surroundings. Conversations wafted around her, fragments of life illustrating both support and disillusionment. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing on the edge of a precipice, staring down into the unknown abyss of judgment. If she stumbled, would anyone dare to catch her? The ringing of her phone jolted her from her reverie. A text from Jake flickered on the screen. Had a talk with a few board members. Some are intrigued by your ideas. But we need to refine your presentation. The words sparked a dual reaction, a rush of gratitude mixed with anxiety. She knew she needed to impress, to craft her narrative so the board members could see past the sketches into the soul of her vision. The urge to retreat lingering in the shadows, allowing others to dictate her pathway fought against the call of her ambition. With fresh resolve, she returned to her apartment that evening, determination burning in her chest. She needed to comprehend what was at stake not just for the company but for herself. As she unfolded the sketches again, she meticulously picked apart the details, crafting a coherent story from colors and shapes. Each stroke carried intention, embodying change that could ripple through the company, but more than the visual presentation, she realized she must convey the emotional core of the project. What if she focused her presentation not merely on numbers and aesthetics but on a broader narrative of connection and evolution? With hours turning into a step-by-step plan, she infused the sketches with the essence of her journey and the company's potential growth. The meticulous preparation began to crystallize her vision into something tangible. It was a transformation from insecurity into a resonant declaration of purpose. As the day of the presentation approached, the weight of expectation morphed from a burden into fuel. An understanding began to coalesce. This moment could reshape her not just professionally but personally. It was a chance to rewrite her own narrative, to cement her identity beyond being the designer behind concepts. She would be the visionary advocating for change, yet even as her confidence soared, a subtle trepidation remained. What if the board was resistant to change? What if Mac's voice permeated the meeting, drowning out her ideas? When she stood before the board, she would confront not only their skepticism but the very limits she had imposed on herself. The clock ticked steadily toward the inevitable confrontation. This journey was penetrating deeper than just professional aspirations, it defined her approach to fear and success. As the meeting loomed, a complex cascade of emotions entwined themselves around her resolve. Would she break away from her past? That question floated through her mind, echoing like a mantra. She needed to face it head-on and discover the true strength that lay within before walking into that boardroom transformed not merely as an employee but as an advocate poised on the brink of change. What awaited her beyond that door? Would her moment of truth carve out a new path, or would it lead to a confrontation more profound than she dared to conceive? The day arrived, and the conference room felt more like a gladiatorial arena than a space for collaborative ideas. As Emily approached the door, her heart thundered in her chest, each beat amplifying her resolve. She had practiced the presentation a dozen times, visualizing each detail as if weaving a tapestry of her journey. But she could never fully control the anticipation swirling in the room, charged with skepticism fed by Mac's lingering influence. Stepping inside, the stark lighting caught the faces of the board members, an audience weighing her meticulously crafted vision against their experiences. She felt like a moth drawn to an unforgiving flame. The tension was palpable, an invisible wall she would need to break through to reach them. Emily centered herself, recalling the emotional core of her project, the need for connection, innovation, and beneath it all, her own growth. "Thank you for giving me this opportunity," she began, her voice steady but tinged with fervor. The board members' expressions were inscrutable, a mixture of curiosity and guarded skepticism. "Today, I want to share not just designs, but a vision for a transformative collaboration." As she flipped through her sketches, showcasing vibrant colors and elaborate designs, she paused to emphasize key elements. Each illustration played a role in a larger narrative she had meticulously constructed, intertwining the company's future with her personal journey. She spoke from her heart, detailing past failures and the tenacity that allowed her to learn and grow. With each point, she sensed the atmosphere shifting slightly, the barriers she had felt upon entering starting to rattle. Mac's reputation loomed large, yet she chose to acknowledge it directly, infusing her presentation with a rare authenticity. "We've all encountered skepticism. It can sometimes serve to prod us forward," she stated. "But it can also confine us to the familiar." The subtle shift in her tone echoed her internal shifts. She was no longer hiding behind the label of junior designer, but asserting herself as a visionary with insight to share. She watched as the expressions of the board members began to change from mere evaluation to engagement. It was as if they were shifting their views, not just on her sketches but on what could be achieved through collaborative creativity. The questions began to flow, not criticisms but inquiries reflecting curiosity and a willingness to explore possibilities, yet, as the meeting progressed, she faced an unexpected hurdle. During a particularly incisive moment, Mac interjected, his tone dripping with condescension. "Emily, it's admirable to come in with big dreams, but how can we trust that these ideas won't end up as just colorful images on a page?" For a fleeting moment, doubt flickered at the corner of her mind. His words were designed to pierce through her growing confidence. But instead of retreating, she leaned into the discomfort. "I value skepticism, it drives innovation. What I propose is not merely a project but a pivot, a chance for us to emerge stronger, to redefine how we connect with our audience." Her response reverberated in the room, and she could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. The once oppressive nature of the board's skepticism started to morph into a test of her resolve. Each question thrown her way was not just a challenge, they became opportunities to illuminate her vision further. As the discussion evolved, though tentative, she relished the exchange. Each member leaned in closer, drawn into the process of exploration she had ignited. It was nothing less than transformative. She was no longer defending herself but actively shaping the dialogue. By the end of the session, the board seemed genuinely intrigued, their initial skepticism now tempered by curiosity. As she walked out of the room, however, a new realization surfaced: this was only the beginning. She had changed the narrative, but building a lasting legacy required more than just one presentation. What ripples would her boldness create beyond this meeting? Would she be able to maintain her newfound voice as the tides of corporate culture threatened to ebb back towards doubt? The lingering questions set off a tumult of thoughts within her. Emily had stepped into a light she yearned for, yet it was now clear that continuing to shine would demand even greater courage. The door to her office swung shut behind her, but the challenge ahead was not merely about presenting ideas, it would be about forging alliances and learning to embrace the tumultuous waters of change without losing sight of her foundational purpose. What awaited her on this path wouldn't be simple, but she was ready to seek the answers. As she sat at her desk, invigorated but apprehensive, a notification pinged on her phone, a message from Jake. The board was impressed. They want a follow-up session. They need details, and soon. That was the hook. The opportunity felt like a double-edged sword. Would she be prepared to elevate her vision even further, or would old fears seek to ensnare her once more? The next step required not only creativity but resilience, and it was a test she was ready to face. Emily leaned back in her chair, exhaling slowly as she stared at her computer screen, the blank document taunting her. The silence of her office was deafening, punctuated only by the rhythmic clicking of the keyboard. The board's positive response had ignited something within her, an urgency to elevate her vision, yet the fear of vulnerability loomed larger than before. With each keystroke, she wrestled with doubt, the remnants of Mac's skepticism echoing in her mind. She set her hands on the desk in a moment of clarity. This was more than a follow-up presentation, it was an opportunity to solidify her place in the company and, more importantly, within herself. While everyone in that room had been watching her as if she were a performance, she recognized the role was far more complex. It was about exchanging ideas, encouraging growth, and reinforcing her newfound conviction, a quest for authenticity over mere approval. The late afternoon sun filtered through the window, illuminating new sketches she had pinned to the wall. Each design symbolized not only creativity but the relationship she wanted to build with her audience, a partnership based on shared ideals rather than hierarchical expectations. Emily felt an urge to dive even deeper into what made her passionate, to look beyond colors and shapes toward the underlying stories her designs could tell. Her phone buzzed again, snapping her back into focus. Jake's name flashed across the screen. "Need insights from you to support your pitch," he wrote. The urgency in his message reminded her that the stakes were rising, not just for the project, but for her identity as a designer. A moment of uncertainty threatened to dampen her enthusiasm. Did she possess what it took to give them everything they needed? Would she be able to encapsulate her vision compellingly enough to silence any remaining doubts? No. She had already set the tone. Were they seeking concrete details? Then she would deliver them infused with her personal narrative, ripe with the same inspiration that had cascaded through her during the initial meeting. With determination boiling inside her, she opened a new document and began to outline her presentation. Each section transformed into a battleground where she would counter skepticism with enthusiasm, where her designs would be more than just aesthetic artifacts, and where her voice would evolve from whispers to declarations. She wasn't just selling a project, she was advocating for a future of collaboration, authenticity, and creativity. The evening grew late, shadows lengthening across her office as time slipped away. Her phone buzzed once more. With trepidation, she opened a new message. It was a simple question from Jake, but it forced a tidal wave of realization to wash over her. "What is your main goal in this pitch?" Simple yet profound. Emily paused, her fingers frozen over the keyboard. What was her goal? The truth resonated deep inside her. It wasn't just to convince the board. It was to lay the groundwork for a new approach. She envisioned colleagues working together, more than just implementing her designs, but collaborating to sow an environment where ideas flourished and innovation thrived. With renewed clarity, she jotted down her goal at the top of the document. To promote a culture of collaboration and ignite creativity that aligns with our core values. As she solidified her thoughts into actionable strategies and rich narratives, Emily felt pieces of herself align. The fear that had haunted her began to dissolve in the security of clarity and purpose. For every question the board might throw at her, she could now formulate answers grounded in the passion she had for her work. But then, a chilling realization crept into her mind: Mac would not let her glide so easily. All of his calculated skepticism could resurface, ready to challenge her earnestness head-on. The stakes were growing higher, and she knew she had to prepare for a confrontation, not just with him but with the remnants of her own fear. Would she have the strength to stand firm against his doubts, to validate her worth in the eyes of her colleagues? To launch forward in this burgeoning corporate environment, she would need to harness every ounce of confidence she had cultivated. Tomorrow would be the moment when the foundations of her resolve would be tested. And deep in her heart, she felt a daring exhilaration. This was more than a presentation, it was a declaration of who she had become: a designer, a leader, and a voice that would not be silenced. As she closed her laptop, a fire ignited within her core. The path ahead wasn't just about her ideas, it was about courage, revealing her truths, and stepping into her own circle of influence. What awaited her at that meeting was uncertain. But one thing was clear: she was ready to confront not only the board but also the shadows of doubt that loomed ever more frighteningly in her past. The battle for her future began at dawn, and for the first time, she felt unshackled, a warrior on the cusp of a defining moment. As dawn broke, the sun cast a warm glow across Emily's workspace, illuminating her notes and sketches. The tranquility of the morning, however, did little to quell the anxiety churning in her stomach. She sat at her desk, sipping strong coffee, her mind racing with thoughts of the presentation ahead. The board members' faces flashed before her, each embodying a unique challenge she would face. Time seemed to stretch as she focused on her breathing, attempting to center herself. Today was pivotal. This was her moment to challenge not only the board's perceptions but to reclaim her narrative, a narrative shaken but not broken by Mac's skepticism. Emily couldn't afford to let his doubts overshadow her emerging voice. The morning passed in a blur of rehearsing key points, imagining questions and her responses. She meticulously crafted her presentation, weaving in stories from her past projects that underscored her capacity to innovate alongside others. Every anecdote reminded her of her journey, a path lined with setbacks that had only deepened her resilience. When she arrived at the conference room, she paused at the threshold. The space was bright and sterile, filled with the more intimidating members of the board. Their chatter was subdued as they eyed the slides she had prepared, the physical manifestations of her ideas projected on the wall. Jake offered a reassuring smile from his seat. Emily took a deep breath and stepped forward, her heart racing as she took her place at the front, standing before her colleagues transformed into a defiant stance. "Good morning, everyone," she began, her voice steady despite the tremor of anticipation. "Today I'm not only presenting a project, I'm sharing a vision." Each word resonated with a sense of purpose, and Emily felt the weight of their gazes shift, piquing curiosity rather than skepticism, at least for now. As she explained her designs, their evolution from mere aesthetics to means of amplifying collaboration, she made eye contact with each board member. The exchange felt dynamic, a shift from passive observation to engagement. But as expected, Mac's expression remained inscrutable, his demeanor bordering on dismissive, subtly countering her newfound confidence. "Interesting ideas," he said, interrupting her flow after a few minutes. "But how do you plan to measure the success of all this collaboration? Isn't it a bit abstract?" The challenge struck a nerve. Waves of doubt crashed over her, moments of vulnerability rekindling. She instinctively felt the old prophecy of failure whispering in her ear, attempting to destabilize her hard-won composure. Yet, amidst that uncertainty, clarity emerged. "It's true, collaboration can be abstract," she replied, her voice firmer now. "But it's also about creating measurable outcomes. Successful projects hinge on our ability to engage every team member. I envision regular feedback loops, where we're not just implementing designs but adjusting and growing them in concert with the collective insights of our team." The board shifted restlessly. She needed this one moment to cement her argument. Mac would push back, she was certain of that, but she could sense a shift. Suddenly, her confidence surged forth, drawing on the passion that had ignited her convictions the night before. "Yes, there are measurable KPIs," Emily continued, her excitement spilling into her tone. "But what I can't quantify is the creativity cultivated when people feel valued and integral to the process. That's where authentic innovation blooms." For a fleeting moment, several nodding heads in the room reassured her, but she failed to catch the smirk on Mac's face as the board disassembled her words, pulling them apart, fusing them into what sounded like doubts. "While your passionate rhetoric is appreciated," he said, that condescending edge sharpening, "how do you plan to mitigate risks in the collaboration? Isn't it naive to think everyone will engage enthusiastically?" The question hung thick in the air, laden with challenge and the specter of self-doubt. Fear griped her heart, but then she remembered her goal. This was more than a pitch, it was her call to action. "Naivety can often lead to innovation," she shot back, drawing on her courage. "Risk is a part of creativity. The key lies in fostering an environment where diverse ideas are embraced. Each voice adds a layer of depth. This is how we ensure success and growth." The murmurs around the room shifted. Encouraged, Emily pressed on, committed to laying the foundations of a new culture within the company. The connection began to bloom. She wasn't merely facing the board's skepticism but the very edges of her own apprehensions. As she concluded her presentation, with energy crackling in the air, Emily caught Mac's gaze. His expression had shifted, and for the first time, it echoed uncertainty, a fraying of his once strong disregard for her vision. Was this the moment she had been waiting for? She felt invigorated by the challenge, eager to trace her narrative, one that might very well topple the barriers she faced, beginning right here, but as she left the meeting room, the uncertainty lingered like an uninvited companion. Was her victory merely an illusion spun from hope, or something far more substantial? A haunting thought made her pulse quicken. She would need to prepare for the consequence of her revelations, especially from an opponent like Mac. In the wake of her triumph, she knew a storm was brewing, and the next confrontation loomed on the horizon. Would she find the strength within to grapple with the darkness threatening to swallow her whole? Emily's heart raced as she stepped away from the conference room, the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. She clutched the edges of her presentation folder as if it were a lifeline, her mind buzzing with the oscillating energy of triumph and apprehension. Had she truly made an impact, or was Mac's expression just a fleeting flicker of uncertainty against the backdrop of his disdain? She could almost feel the weight of the moment, the palpable shift in the air. But there was no time to dwell on what could have been. Emily had to steel herself for the inevitable fallout from both Mac and the board. As she passed the glass walls of the offices, colleagues continued their mundane tasks, oblivious to the shift that had just occurred. "Hey, Emily. Great job." Jake called out, his voice the only beacon in the sterile office atmosphere. The warmth in his eyes felt grounding, as though he were anchoring her amidst the whirlwind swirling inside her mind. "Thanks. But I don't know if it was enough," she replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Trust in yourself. Remember, you're not just presenting a project, you're advocating for your vision. You're changing the narrative." His encouragement illuminated a path through her cluttered thoughts. Yet, Mac's doubts crept in once more. What if he was right? What if everyone didn't engage enthusiastically? Guided by a mixture of determination and anxiety, Emily retreated to her workspace. She slid into her chair and turned on her computer, the screen illuminating her scattered notes. She needed to think strategically how to address the board's concerns and also fortify her own confidence against Mac's critical nature. As she typed out a draft of responses to potential questions, her mind expanded beyond just the fear of criticism. She recognized that growth was tied to vulnerability. She had navigated turbulent waters before, each setback had honed her abilities. Reflecting on her past victories, she revisited her early experiences in design. There were moments of brilliance, but also times of absolute chaos. Yet, through it all, she had developed a knack for harnessing collective energy, turning uncertainty into explosive creativity. Suddenly, her phone buzzed, tearing her from introspection. It was a message from Jake: "Let us grab lunch. Need to celebrate. Besides, I have feedback on your presentation." She hesitated, then realized she needed that support. Gathering her things, she forced herself to exhale, consciously relieving the tension from her shoulders. Juggling between gratitude and apprehension, she embarked on her way to the cafe. Sitting across from Jake, their conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and the everyday banter that helped ease her anxious heart. Yet amidst the lightness, a sense of impending confrontation hovered as they discussed the nuances of her presentation. "I really think you shifted the dynamics in there. People were starting to listen to you," Jake encouraged. "But what if they forget? What if I can't back it up in real time?" Emily's voice trembled, exposing her fear. Jake leaned in, his gaze steady. "This isn't just about the metrics. You embodied the importance of human connection today. Now you have to keep it alive. Let them know that the conversation isn't over. Show them you're willing to dig in." His words crystallized an idea that sparked a flame within her. Emily stirred her coffee, contemplating the plan forming in her mind. She needed to build a community around her vision, a network of genuine collaboration and growth. But that called for action, not just thoughts or persuasive presentations. Determined to launch her strategy, Emily proposed an initiative to enhance team engagement. Building regular brainstorming sessions would foster that elusive collaboration. Instead of waiting for the board to buy into her vision, she would create allies among her peers. She could craft a dialogue where innovation thrived. Let us start with a pilot workshop. Involve those who are receptive. You can showcase the potential, Jake suggested, his enthusiasm contagious. Yes. I can lead a meeting, start gathering feedback before returning to the board with tangible results. Emily exclaimed, the excitement bubbling within her, but a shadow lurked behind this newfound determination. Was she adequately prepared for Mac's inevitable challenges? The thought loomed, reminding her of the battles still to come, testing her resolve. I'm going to do it, she declared, her voice now resolved. Once back at her desk, Emily began sketching out a framework for the workshop, the words taking form like a manifesto aspiring to life. Each stroke of her pen felt like reclaiming her power, a deliberate move towards proactive growth. Yet as the excitement surged, so did a deeper question: would her efforts be enough to withstand Mac's scrutiny? Would the board truly embrace her efforts, or would they remain anchored in skepticism, questioning her every move? Determined to push through the uncertainty, she stayed focused, knowing each new challenge was a chance for her to rise. But in that bubbling tide of hope, she couldn't shake the realization: the next confrontation with Mac would determine the course of her journey. And so, with anticipation growing like a tide, Emily squared her shoulders, bracing for the storm that was sure to come. Would she find the resilience to stand firm, or would this next encounter rattle her newfound confidence? The day had dawned with a fierce brilliance as Emily arrived at the office, her heart racing with anticipation. She had spent the night awake, meticulously rehearsing her presentation for the follow-up workshop. Gone were the fears that had once shackled her. Today, she carried the weight of conviction, eager to weave her vision into the fabric of the firm. Walking into the office, she immediately felt the energy of her colleagues buzzing around her, an atmosphere charged with curiosity about the new initiative. Emily ducked into her workspace, still buzzing with excitement, and began arranging her materials. She had crafted a schedule for the workshop, and during the early morning hours, inspiration poured forth the outlines of a collaborative process that would allow every voice to matter. Finally, she was ready to unveil it. As she called the team into the meeting room, a sense of purpose flooded through her veins. Each colleague was a stitch in a tapestry of innovative construction, and she stood at the helm, ready to challenge the established norm. She felt grounded in the clarity of her mission to create not just structures, but an environment infused with belonging and creativity. With each person seated, she laid out her vision clearly. "We have the chance to reshape how we work together," she began, her voice unwavering, "to redefine what our legacy will be. This workshop is not just about generating ideas, it's about cultivating collaboration that thrives on authenticity and mutual respect." Each word rang with sincerity, resonating with the crowd. As the workshop commenced, ideas flowed like a rich current. Colleagues who had previously been hesitant now offered input, their creativity sparking anew in an atmosphere that felt liberating. Emily witnessed the energetic evolution of innovation, voices exchanged freely, actively building upon each other's thoughts. In this sea of engagement, the shadows of skepticism began to drift away. Suddenly, the door swung open with a resolute burst, and in walked Mac, his expression a blend of condescension and curiosity. "What is going on here?" he interrupted, his tone dripping with skepticism. "Emily has organized a collaborative workshop," one colleague chimed in, clearly enthusiastic. Mac raised an eyebrow, skepticism plastered across his face. "Is that so? You think this colorful exercise will change the metrics we rely on?" He surveyed the room, as if daring anyone to defend Emily's initiative. Taking a deep breath, Emily stepped forward, fueled by the momentum of the collective energy around her. "Mac, this isn't just about metrics, it's about fostering a workplace culture that inspires innovation. Growth isn't solely quantitative, it's rooted in the richness of diverse perspectives and ideas." A hush fell over the room, the air arcing with energy. She was no longer the girl crushed by doubt. The glimmer of recognition flickered in the room as her peers nodded in agreement, each shoulder straightening with newfound confidence. "You may think this is a trivial effort, Mac," Emily continued, "but I believe it could lead us to results that far exceed what we've achieved. These conversations we're building will enhance our output, inspire creativity, and cultivate loyalty." Mac's expression faltered, the confident facade he maintained cracked as murmurs of agreement bloomed around the room. A moment of realization flickered within him, as if the depths of what Emily proposed were beginning to break through. Sensing the shift, Emily embraced the vulnerability the confrontation had birthed within her. "I'm not trying to displace our legacy, I'm inviting us to evolve it together. I've grown, and I see that growth reflected in the talents of everyone here." A new sense of solidarity echoed around the table, emboldened by Emily's conviction. Feedback sprung from the group, hesitance now replaced by genuine ideas, flowing effortlessly into actionable plans. The workshop thrived with momentum, each enthusiastic suggestion a powerful testament to what could be achieved when they all leaned into authentic collaboration. Emily facilitated discussions, laying the groundwork for future sessions where innovation wasn't just a goal, it became a collective expectation. The workshop culminated in a proposal that the team decided to present to the board, an initiative that would harness their collective talents and projects moving forward. Emily recognized the depth of her transformation. She had maneuvered the challenges, turning what were once doubts into opportunities for engagement. Days later, standing before the board again felt different. This time, she didn't feel small or insignificant. She stood firm, grounded in the confidence that she derived from her colleagues. The energy radiated from the group, each member showing an unwavering commitment to the vision they had crafted together, ready to present it as a unified front. As she concluded her pitch, she sought out Jake's encouraging gaze, which bolstered her resolve even more. The board members leaned in, intrigued by the unified ideas laid before them. No longer whispering doubts shadowed the room, the conversation ignited excitement instead. They exchanged questions and, this time, they came from a place of genuine interest. Ultimately, the board approved the initiative. The overwhelming validation washed through Emily in waves. She had successfully transformed not just herself but the workplace culture, turning doubt into determination and apathy into engagement. In that moment, a profound sense of fulfillment enveloped her, a rare mixture of gratitude, pride, and newfound strength coursing through her. No longer was she just the assistant, or Jake's cousin, she was Emily, the visionary leader who had not only defended her perspective but solidified her rightful place in the legacy that she was helping to reshape. As the board meeting wrapped up, victorious in spirit, Emily knew that she had only just begun to explore the vast landscape of her potential. The roots of her achievements were deeply embedded in her willingness to confront challenges head-on, along with the collective strength of her colleagues who had rallied behind a shared vision. This was her moment, the culmination of her growth, and she embraced it wholeheartedly. You need to subscribe now to our channel to witness the next exclusive emotional stories that transform lives. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show us that these journeys of personal overcoming matter. Comment below with your reactions and theories about Emily's inspiring journey. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion unfold. Let us keep this uplifting movement alive.